This is the book of 2nd Ezra, chapter 15 and verse 1. Behold, speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy, which I will put in thy mouth, saith the Lord, and cause them to be written in paper, for they are faithful and true. Fear not the imaginations against thee, let not the incredulity of them trouble thee that speak against thee. For all the unfaithful shall die in their unfaithfulness. Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha, Kodash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Peace and blessings to the whole elect. In this lesson, I want to go into pretty much a video that came out about a day ago, maybe 2 days ago, on Inside Edition. And also, I want to put up the copyright disclaimer. So this is copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. So fair use, I get nothing from using Inside Edition's video. But this was a video that came out, I believe, excuse me, my allergies, that came out Friday with the actress Kristen Dunst. It says, as you can see the title there, says Kristen Dunst was shaken after watching Civil War. Now, this actress, Kristen Dunst, if you ever seen her before, she's been in, she was Mary Jane in the Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire. So just in case, if you haven't seen her in a while, you're like, where the hell she been at? Yeah. Or if you see her face, you're like, oh, she looks familiar. She was Mary Jane in the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, right? And she acts in this movie. And if you know anything about movies, after the movies are, done and everything, they have a separate theater or wherever they go at. I'm not too particular on the, the location or whatever, but the actors, directors, all those who had a part in the movie, they go to a separate theater where they're able to pretty much watch their work. They go and see the movie. And she, as you can see, I'll play the video as well. Like the title says, it says Kristen Dunst was shaken after watching Civil War. And Civil War is written about in the scriptures. That's why I brought out, and I'll read it again, 2nd Ezra, the 15th chapter, and the first verse. It says, Behold, speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy, which I will put in thy mouth. Now, prophecy or to prophesy means to say before. Pro is before, right? And phesai means to speak. So to say before. To say what? To say what? To say what? To say something before it happens, right? Which I will put in thy mouth, saith the Lord, and cause them to be written in paper, for they are faithful and true. So all the prophecies that we have written of in the scriptures, right? Although they may have not happened during the time that they were written down or given to the prophets, they are future prophecies that will soon to happen, right? Going into giving you examples such as Daniel, the 7th chapter, right? When you go into Daniel, the 7th chapter, it talks about the kingdoms that will be raised up and have power in the earth, right? The different nations. Now, one after the other, or also Daniel, the 2nd chapter as well, goes into the Babylonians having their power. Then after the Babylonians, the Medo-Persians will have their power. Then obviously after them, there'll be the Greeks and then the Romans, right? But Daniel, as we know in history, Daniel was from the Babylonian Empire to the Persian Empire, right? So throughout history, throughout time passing, you had the Babylonians who were into power, and then after the Babylonians got taken down, then the Persians came into power. But the prophecy that Daniel had that was given in, the 2nd chapter, the vision that was really given to King Nebuchadnezzar, and then Daniel received that and was able to interpret it, what it meant. And also you get a more detailed one in Daniel, the 7th chapter. It gives you, like I said, the history of the kingdoms that would rise and fall throughout the ages, right? So going pretty much to go into saying that like in verse 2 it says, and cause them to be written in paper, for they are faithful and true. During Daniel's time, he wrote, or he prophesied pretty much, or was given the vision of let's just use the Greeks come into power, right? Now, the Babylonians were, if I'm not mistaken, around 580 something, or maybe a little bit before that, like maybe let's say 590 something, that they came into power. And then they were taken out of power, if I'm not mistaken, 550 something with Cyrus, right? So, excuse me. So, if I'm not mistaken, the Babylonians were in power for about 40 something years, if I'm not mistaken, right? Give or take the math on that. And then the Greeks came into power around the 300s. I want to say, like, maybe let's just say let's give a rough estimate, because I know Alexander died, if I'm not mistaken, 323, if I'm not mistaken. So let's just say around 340, the Greeks started coming up into power and things like that. So from the 500 BC to about 300 BC, that's about 200 years of time between it. But what Daniel still prophesied, right, about, eventually the Greeks coming into power, right? So just basically, like I'm saying, just to give you a historical example, that although these things don't happen like that, they're going to happen later on in time, right? That's why you have future prophecy. So when you read the prophecies in the scriptures, you may think that, oh, that happened during the prophet's time. No, that didn't happen during this time. It's for a later time period. Things like Ezekiel, the 38th chapter, that's happening or going to happen in our time period now. Although it was written during the time of Ezekiel, which Ezekiel also was during the Babylonian Empire, right? But he wrote about a future prophecy that would happen now in our time, right? Also, verse 3, it says, fear not the imaginations against thee, let not the incredulity of them trouble thee, right? And incredulity means the unbelief, right? A part of the unbelief is what people will say, well, oh, like I gave the example, those prophecies that you guys are saying are going to happen now. No, those things happened already during Ezekiel's time. It was written for Ezekiel's time, or Isaiah's time, or Jeremiah, or Amos, right? Sorry, my allergies, right? Those things were written during those times. Those things were filled during their times, during their ages when they were walking the earth. That's a part of the incredulity, the unbelief. Right? Again, fear not the imaginations against thee, let not the incredulity of them trouble thee that speak against thee. Excuse me. Verse 4, for all the unfaithful shall die in their unfaithfulness. So because of their unbelief, they're going to die in their unbelief. Because people don't believe that civil war is going to happen here in America. But it is prophesied and written about in the scriptures. So I'm going to play the video. Slack for the long rant right there. Just want to really thoroughly go through that. But I'm going to play the video, and you're going to hear her give her little testimony at the end as well, that, she was shaken up because, well, I'll just let it play.
19 states have seceded. The new film, Civil War, imagines battles in the streets of America. This scene shows the Lincoln Memorial being blown to bits. The haunting trailer depicts the country descending into mayhem as America the Beautiful is played. The movie premiered last night at the South by Southwest Film Festival. Kristen Dunst plays a photographer trying to get to Washington in the midst of chaos to interview the authoritarian president, played by Nick Offerman.
Citizens of America, the so-called Western forces of Texas and California have suffered a very great defeat.
One reviewer gives the movie a rave, 4 stars, perfectly horrifying. But Deadline called it muddled. The film is sure to be controversial. The very idea of a civil war breaking out in America might seem preposterous, even with all the political and cultural divides we face. But one disturbing poll found 40% of Americans saying they believe a civil war was at least somewhat likely in the next 10 years. In the film, armed neighbors turn on each other.
Well, you're American, okay? Okay. What kind of American are you?
Kristen Dunst says she was left shaken after watching the movie for the first time last night.
I feel like it does shake you because it's a very intense, it feels very real, the film, and I think that's why it's affecting everybody so much.
God bless America.
So that's that. And I'll go through some certain points in the video just to go back. But like you said, as you heard her say, that she was shaken after watching the movie, right, that she acted in, because it felt very real. And these are the things, it is going to be very real because these are the things that's going to happen here in America. Right now, one part I want to go back to was this guy. Where is he? I believe it was this
Bit
guy.
muddled. The film is sure to be controversial. The very idea of a civil war breaking out in America might seem preposterous, even with all the political and cultural divides we face. But one disturbing poll found 40% of Americans saying they believe a civil war was at least somewhat likely in the next 10 years.
So you see, 40% of Americans believe that a civil war will happen in the next 10 years, which we don't believe that will happen in the next 10 years. We believe that's going to happen very, very soon, right? So let me actually, no, let's get that, right? So let's seeing as how the topic is pretty much Civil War, the movie is Civil War. Now, this is going to be Mark, the 3rd chapter in the Amplified version, the Amplified Bible. And I want you to see right here where it said. So let me see. I'm going to start at verse 22, right? This is after the scribes and Pharisees see Yahushua, the miracles that he's performing, healing people. This is what they said against him. Mark, the 3rd chapter and the 22nd verse in the Amplified Bible version. It says, the scribes who came down from Jerusalem were saying he is possessed by Beelzebub, which is Satan. He is driving out the demons by the power of the ruler of the demons. So he called, which is Yahushua, he called them to himself and spoke to them in parables. How can Satan drive out Satan? If a kingdom is divided, split into factions, and rebelling against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And that's pretty much what you see in a lot of these movies, but also you're going to see in this movie, right, which I'll play this clip after bringing out that point. I'll play this clip right here as well, that what you're going to have factions, and I've said that in videos before. You have the video game The Division. Now, again, giving you the example of the Division video game, you had in that video game, after pretty much New York was like on a lockdown or whatever, you had different factions. Now, one of the factions that I remember was called the Cleaners, right? And it was pretty much the firefighters that pretty much made a faction, thinking that if they burn the whole of New York City, in the video game, mind you, I'm not saying this is real life, I'm saying in the video game, that if they burn the whole of New York, that's how they would be able to get rid of the dollar flu virus. So yes, when you watch these movies, whether it be The Purge and things like that, you always have groups of individuals getting up together, right? And, pretty much cliques and things like that. Don't you have those same things in, in school and everything? So it's going to be the same thing that's going to happen in the last days when there's civil war, all hell breaking loose. You're going to have people splitting up into groups, into factions. One person's for this person, another person's for that person. Or this group of people is for this belief, another group of people is for this belief. So I'll read that precept again, then let me play this clip for you. So again, verse 24 says, if a kingdom is divided, split into factions, and rebelling against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And that seems to be the premise with the movie as well, that I believe they said California and Texas, pretty much in the movie, is pretty much rebelling against the American government in the movie. Right? Now, listen to this clip after I just read that.
In the film, armed neighbors turn on each other.
Well, you're American, okay? Okay. What kind of American are you?
See, he said, what kind of American? So people are going to be asking questions in those type of days, like, let's just use this example, Biden and Trump. Are you for Biden? Are you for Trump? That's what he essentially means when he says, what kind of American are you? Are you going to stand up for your country? Are you patriotic? Are you going to just let these migrants just come up in here and take our country and things like that? So that's what he essentially meant. Now, again, this is just the gist I'm getting from the movie, because essentially the guy who, is surrounded by the individuals with guns, he's saying, look, we're American, don't shoot us. We're Americans. You're American. I'm an American, why are we killing each other? But then the guy scratches the side of his face. He's like, okay, but what kind of American are you? So he's getting specific into what's your beliefs? Whose side are you on? Because yeah, you're an American, but are you an American that's on the side of this individual or that individual? What are your beliefs? And again, going back to, Again, it said, if a kingdom is divided, split into factions and rebelling. And again, when this movie comes out, I believe it's coming out April 12th, if I'm not mistaken. On a Friday, we'll be able to see what the movie is really about and what's the premise of the movie. But just like any of these movies, you know, Purge, this is not the first movie, this movie Civil War, to come out that has the same type of stuff. Even in Purge, they have that factions, groups of people getting together to kill and things like that, right? In those Purge movies. Now, let me go back a little bit because it said what? Neighbors as well, right? Neighbors turning on neighbors. And that, like I said, is also prophetic, right? These are future prophecies that we're going to read here. But let's go back a little bit.
Was at least somewhat likely in the next 10 years.
So, Salakia, let me go back on that. So already within the mindset of people, what? You have the mindset of people here thinking in America that what? These things that are in the movies are very probable, right? That could happen in the next 10 years. So let's even think about something like The Purge. If a movie like Civil War is probable, how much more The Purge? You know, even though this wasn't brought up, you know, the Purge movie wasn't brought up. I believe the last Purge movie, I think it was called The Forever Purge. I think that may have came out 2 years ago, maybe 3, right? Called The Forever Purge, which pretty much the Purge was never going to end, essentially. That was pretty much the name of the movie. So how do people feel about the Purge movies as well? If they feel that way, that something like Civil War could happen in the next 10 years, what's the mindset of the American people that think that, hey, a forever purge or a purge could happen within the next 10 years as well? And in those purge movies, pretty much you have one day, 24 hours, where you're free to commit crimes or kill or whatever. It's giving you an insight. Those polls right there that guy said gives you insight in the minds of the people. And that lets us know through the Spirit that, Lord, like it said in 2nd Ezra, for they are faithful and true.
In the film, armed neighbors turn on each other.
See? Armed neighbors turn on each other, right? This is Isaiah chapter 19 and verse 2. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians. Now, when you see that, don't get thrown off because you'll think, oh, the Egyptians, well, that's, you know, the Africans or whatever, or that's the African nations. No, the modern day Egyptians is what? The Americans today, because what we are in modern day or spiritual Sodom and Egypt, which is America. America copies or emulates the energies or the ways of ancient Egypt and ancient Sodom and Gomorrah. So when it says, I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, don't get tripped up. That's just talking about what? These Americans today. America is likened unto, like I said again, is likened unto Egypt. Egypt was represent what? Bondage. And we've been brought into bondage here in America. Our forefathers, when they came over here on those slave ships. Right? So I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and we're understanding pretty much you could read that as I will set the Americans against Americans, and they shall fight everyone against his brother and everyone against his neighbor, just like in the video, like with the movie, armed neighbors turning on each other, right? That's what the Lord is going to do. Although this is coming out of the prophet Isaiah's mouth, I. It doesn't go to the prophet Isaiah. It doesn't go to us. It is the Heavenly Father that is doing these things. So let's read that again with understanding. And I, not the prophet Isaiah, the Heavenly Father will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, the Americans against the Americans, right? The American citizens on each other. And they shall fight everyone against his brother and everyone against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom, right? So the Lord is going to make the American citizens, the American people, turn on each other and fight, which is essentially civil war, right? Going back again to the amplified version of Mark, the 3rd chapter, these people are also going to group up into factions based upon what they believe. You're going to have the patriotic Americans getting together. Let's just use the example of Biden and Trump. You're going to have the Make America Great Again American citizens band together, and that will be a faction, right? Those who are still for Biden, you're going to have the Biden faction Americans come together, right? That's usually what happens even in a civil war. Even when a country gets divided, you're still going to have little groups that get together based upon their beliefs, right? So this is 2nd Ezra, chapter 15, going to the 14th verse now. It says, "Woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh." Right? Like actor Kristen Dunst was saying that, oh, this felt very real and things like that. Well, the sword and the destruction draweth nigh. For one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. Now, swords doesn't mean literal swords. Sword just means a weapon. Now, the modern day sword could be a gun, bat, whatever you have you, right? That is the sword. For there shall be sedition amongst men. Now, what is sedition? Right? Sedition is conduct or speech inciting people to rebel against the authority of a state or monarch. But I'm going to focus on conduct there because pretty much what the conduct is how you act. And essentially with the movie Civil War, pretty much that's what people are doing. Their conduct is inciting other people to rebel against what? The American government, as we can see in the movie. And this will play out in real life as well. The conduct of the Americans when the Lord, is moving the minds of the Americans to, pretty much be against their government because they're going to see that their government is not for them. Just using the example of the migrant crisis, as they call it. They're seeing that all these migrants are getting all these benefits and things like that, but they're making things worse here for the American citizens living in America who have been here since birth for 20, 30, however many years, right? And here it is, these migrants coming over here are causing chaos. They're robbing, they're beating people up, they're assaulting people and things like that. They're assaulting the police, but yet here it is, you're offering them housing, you're giving them benefits and things like that. But here it is, I'm an American citizen. I've been here all my life, a law-abiding citizen, and yet I see no benefits for me. But yet these people are not law-abiding citizens and they're getting all these benefits. What the hell is up with that? Right, so these things that the American people are going to catch up on is eventually going to make them, like it says, continuing, verse 16, "For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes." Now the modern kings and princes are your government officials today, right? And the course of their actions, right, shall stand in their power. Why? Because they're going to see that this government is not treating them right. So the course of their action is going to stand in their power. So they're going to do what they feel is right for themselves. And this again will cause what? Civil war in America. And this will also cause what? Factions, groups to be produced from that. You're going to have some leader rise up and say, hey, I think, let's just say the patriotic Americans, right? You're going to have some leader of that group say, we got to take this country back from these migrants. And all these American citizens are going to follow them and group up. And there's your faction. And all who are not with that, that's going to be neighbor against neighbor, brother against brother, right? That's why, again, in the video, the guy said, he was like, we're Americans. But he was like, okay, but what kind of American are you? See? What's your mindset? Or are you just using the example of the migrant? Are you okay with these migrants coming here and taking our land? Right? Then they say in the video, America the Beautiful playing in the background, you're going to let them take our beautiful America from us? What kind of American are you? See?
You're American, okay? Okay. What kind of American are you?
Kristen Dunst says she was left shaken after watching the movie for the first time last night.
I feel like it does shake you because it's a very intense, it feels very real, the film, and I think that's why it's affecting everybody so much.
God bless America.
Right. So I ended off in this precept here in Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter, right? This is Habakkuk chapter 2 and verse 3. It says, "For the vision is yet for an appointed time." So the vision of civil war is set for this appointed time. Apologies. Right? People sit there and say, oh, you guys have been saying this and that's going to happen. But what? You're living in a time where you're seeing these things are happening. And you're seeing the things that are happening in the world that can cause these things to happen. Again, example using the migrant crisis that could be used to incite eventually the Americans looking at the American government like, yo, y'all are not really for our best interest. We're going to do our own thing because you're not competent enough to rule this country. You're not competent enough to do what you need to do for this company. Sorry, not company, but for this country. Right? So for the vision is set for an appointed time, right? That vision again being civil war, one of the visions being civil war. But at the end it shall speak, and we can again see that happening, again using the migrant crisis as an example. This can lead to civil war amongst the Americans, right? And not lie. Though it tarry, so though it take long, right? Oh, you guys have been saying this forever. Though it tarry, though it take long, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. So again, what we're seeing now that what? It's in that phase of what? Because, though it tarry, though it's been taking a while, wait for it, right? Because it will surely come. And we're seeing that. We're seeing the steps of, hey, that vision of civil war is surely coming. And when it does come, it will not tarry. It will not take long. Right? This is the NLT. It says, this vision is for a future time. It describes the end, and it will be fulfilled. If it seems slow in coming, wait patiently, for it will surely take place. It will not be delayed. Let me see that in the GNT version as well. And then that will be it for the video. Let's see the Amplified. Habakkuk 2 and 3 in the Amplified says, for the vision is yet for the appointed future time. It hurries towards the goal of fulfillment, right? So though it may not seem like it's hurrying to you, it really is. It will not fail. Even though it delays, wait patiently for it, because it will certainly come. It will not delay. And that's the time that we're in right now. These prophecies are not delaying. Right. So that'll be the end of the video. Lord's willing, this video has been edifying. I want to give, again, all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha, Kodash. Again, double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and blessings to the hopeful elect. Shalom.